The ghosts inside my house. Today was like any normal day, well, so I thought as I pulled open my cream curtains that opened up the fields and the bright blue sky, like I did every day, and I didn't think this day was going to be any different. Why? Because I hadn't seen any ghosts in my house for a while, no noises, not moving objects, nothing, and because of this I was happy. Now you may not believe me as I tell you this, just like my mum, and my dad, and I am not allowed to mention it in front of my little sister Mary as she gets scared easily, but here it goes. I live with my mum, dad and little sister. We live in a big Tudor house in the middle of nowhere. Now that's not the part I'm worried about, you not believing, it's this part. I can see ghosts, yes that's right, actual ghosts, like people that aren't there. I hear them, see them, and feel them around me. Since I was a little girl, my sister's age actually, only 3, I realized I could see them. At first I didn't know what they were, they looked odd, old big dresses, suits, they looked very posh. On the evening of my 5th birthday I was asleep in my room and I got woken up by objects moving around my room. Things like my rocking horse that was usually by my window had moved next to my bed. My music box open and playing a sweet lullaby. When I was home alone, at 10, just after my sister was born, my mum and dad went out and left me in charge of the house. Because it was in the middle of nowhere there were no worries, and because my mum when she was younger grew up in this house and nothing ever happened to her that she needed to be worried about, she thought she had nothing to worry about. It was that day, the day I was home alone, that I saw the first little boy. It was only when I was 10 I started to wonder what they were, and because I heard adults always talking about how children have vivid imaginations, make up people, images of the mind, that children often invented to make their childhood more exciting. Because I was quite a lonely child, I played alone in my room, or in the garden while my parents did things around the house, and because I was 10 when I got my first baby sister I lived most of my life alone, so I thought that these people I saw around my house were my imagination so I don't feel lonely. This was strange because the people never really paid any attention to me, but I thought as an imaginary friend they were meant to play with me and talk to me, but they didn't. All they seemed to do was move my things and stare at me. Anyway, on the day I was alone I was walking to my playroom. I was halfway down the hallway when I heard a gentle humming and moving around. I got scared so I stopped midway, clutching to my dress, not daring to blink. I felt a cold breeze past my face and whispers in my ears. They were so gentle I couldn't understand them, and as I was staring at the playroom door I saw a boy run out towards me. He looked younger than me, about 6, he was pale and vivid like he wasn't there, like a mist. He was wearing a blue hat, long white socks, blue shorts, a white shirt, and a blue jacket. He had a small face with blue eyes and he looked up at me with them, glaring at me, not moving, not saying anything, until he whispered, "This is my house, who are you?" "I'm telling mother, get out. Get out." Then he vanished. My heart was pounding, I was terrified. This was not my friend, this was an intruder. Later that day when my mum and dad and little baby sister returned home, we sat down to dinner. Halfway though eating my chicken I looked up at my parents and said, "Who are those strange people that walk round out house, mummy?" She looked at me blankly and laughed. "What do you mean? There are no people in this house other than us. Oh Jean, you and your imagination." I looked back at her and said, "I saw a little boy, he's younger than me, he was in our playroom, playing with my toys, then he came out and spoke to me." Then my dad looked at me with a puzzled look. "Yes Jean, and what did the little boy say to you?" When I gulped down my water I stared at him. "He told me that this was his house, and he wanted us to go away. Daddy, he scared me, this is our house, not this." That's when my mum once again looked at me and said, "Bertie, will you leave her alone and stop encouraging her? And Jean honey, this is our house and I doubt very much that there was a little boy here who told you to get out." At this time I got quite annoyed at my mother because was she listening to me? There was someone here, not just one person but there are lots. I only see them when I'm home alone and I know I'm not imagining them. I have just turned 11. And since I saw the little boy in my playroom I have just seen things move and voices and the occasional person. Now at school we have just read a book, it was about these things called ghosts. Apparently they're dead people, lost souls trapped in our world. Some are harmless, but some are very dangerous, and from what happened next in my life of ghosts I don't think these are kind ghosts. It was a winter's morning and me and my sister were home alone. It was 8 a.m. and Mum and Dad had gone for a walk to the village for some food. I was looking after my little sister Mary who had just learned to walk, so I let her out of her cot, and took her downstairs and placed her in the playroom, where I knew she was safe and only a few feet away from where I was, in the kitchen getting some warm milk and cookies for us to share. As soon as I had started walking towards the kitchen I heard a loud bang, and as I turned around in shock I saw that the playroom door had been slammed shut and Mary on the other side of the door screaming and crying. I tried to get to her but the door was jammed. I knew it wasn't locked as we don't have a lock on the playroom door. I couldn't get in and I was worried. I ran upstairs to try and find something to open the door with, and as I reached the top of the stairs I saw the little boy that I had seen when I was 10. He looked at me with the same blue eyes I remembered him having. He opened his mouth and this time in a loud whisper that seemed to echo in my ear he said, "I told you this was my house and I told you I wanted you out, you never listened to me, so I told my mother and she is very angry with you." I looked back at him trying not to be scared for my sister's sake. "What are you doing to my sister? It's not her fault, please don't hurt her. Let her out and punish me, not my family." The boy laughed. "I gave you the option of leaving but you didn't. I don't know what my mother will do, but there is no way of getting the door open." I had heard enough and ran downstairs. The nursery door was open so I ran in. The window was open, which was impossible because Dad keeps a lock on them so no one can get in. "And Mary? Nowhere, no be seen. Where's my sister, what have you done with her?" The little boy appeared. "Look out the window, Mother said she needed some air." I ran to the window and looked out over the massive field and there I saw my sister, her blonde locks blowing in the wind, her pale face had turned red, she had tears pouring from her eyes. She was at the other end on the field by the pond that Dad and put a fence round because it was dangerous. She was on the other side of that fence, the side with the river. She was so close to the edge, she could fall in any second. I ran to the door, forgetting about the shoes. I ran to the pond where I saw my sister. I climbed over the fence and grabbed Mary and held her tight. "I'm so sorry Mary, this is all my fault, I promise I won't let anyone touch you again." As we headed back to the front door it had closed itself and locked itself. I looked through a window and saw pictures flying around the room, tables turning, curtains being pulled down, chairs being thrown from one side of the room to the next. I saw lots of people, ghosts, whatever they were in our house, and had locked us out. They were wrecking everything. My mum's glasses, cups, and plates were being smashed. My dad's clothes spread on the floor. Now hopefully, my mum would believe me. After sitting in the garden for what seemed like a lifetime, still clutching to my baby sister too afraid to let her go, I saw my parents walking back up the drive. When they saw us sitting there my mum was shocked, you could tell by the look on her face. "What on earth? Why are you out here? It's too dangerous." I had tears in my eyes. I was afraid of what would happen. "I can't get in." "What do you mean?" asked my dad, now looking equally as surprised as my mum. "The ghosts, remember them, the little boy I told you about, the one you said was my imagination? His family have locked us out and wrecked everything. Go on, look through the window, see for yourself." My mum and dad ran to the nearest window. After 1 minute of no one speaking my mum let out a huge scream and fell to the floor. My dad turned round, his face red with anger. I had never seen him looking this angry before. "Jean! What is this?" he burst out. "You're telling me that some called ghosts did this?" "But Daddy! But nothing, you have wrecked out house, locked yourself out, made your sister cry, anything else you wanted wreck." "It wasn't me!" I shouted, bursting into tears. I told him everything, to Mary getting locked in the playroom, to the little boy at the top of the stairs, even when Mary almost fell in the pond. After a few minutes of getting shouted at and blamed for the whole thing, my mum calmed my dad down and he went to the village for a blacksmith to open our door. When we finally go in, I showed my mum the playroom and the open window because I know she knew that there was no way of us opening them. She ran to my dad and said that I must have been telling the truth, and also there was no way I would have been able to do that much damage to every room in the house alone. That's when my mum and dad finally decided to get the village exorcists to come and get rid of the bad spirits in our house. They came at 10 a.m., and they set up a table in the playroom because that's where I had seen the most ghostly activity. They started off with a table that allowed them to connect to the spirits and talk with them to ask them what they wanted. Apparently they had never seen anything like it, and that we were in great danger with their spirits. Their energy was so strong and powerful that they would do whatever they could to get us out of their house. Then they tried to get rid of them. Since the exorcist came to our house we have had nothing. I'm now 13 and I haven't seen a single ghostly thing, no noises, no moving objects, and no ghost sightings. And since the exorcist went we haven't mentioned anything to do with ghosts, especially since my sister forgot everything that happened when she was 2. She has stopped believing in them and she is now scared of anything to do with them, so if we mention them she won't be happy. Which brings me back to the day when it feels like a normal day because nothing has happened for so long, nothing could possibly go wrong anymore, right? Well no, I was wrong because the same day that I opened my curtains thinking that this would be like a normal day, it wasn't. My mum hadn't said anything all day, I mean nothing, not one word. She has been sitting in her chair staring blankly at the fireplace. She had a chunk of hair missing that Dad said he had found on her side of the bed when he got up. Even when we ask her a question she doesn't respond. It was 3 a.m. when it happened. I can't even speak about it, it makes me feel sick, but at 3 a.m. on a Thursday morning I was woken by a scream. My mum's scream. It wasn't coming from her bedroom because she wasn't in her bedroom. She wasn't in my sister's room, or downstairs. In fact she wasn't even in the house, she was in the garden. We saw her in her white gown. The sun was rising and we just about saw her, at the back of the garden where the pond was fenced off. She was standing on the other side on the fence, and there right next to her, I saw the little boy in blue, just like when I was 10, standing next to my mother. Then I heard a whisper. I told you, you should have gone away. My mother wasn't happy, and you took her away from me, so now I'm going to take your mother away from you. And with that my mother fell into the pond. She didn't move, she didn't struggle, she just lay there face down in the pond. I knew I had lost her. End.